President Trump became the first American president to be hosted at a second state visit to Great Britain this week. The president was greeted with a parade of British soldiers wearing dress red uniforms and marching in perfect unison, while ragtag American soldiers popped up from behind rocks and trees and shot at them until they surrendered. Trump and his wife Melania were given a lavish state dinner at Windsor Castle. Trump told the other guests that he was astounded by the beauty of the castle and said it was absolutely amazing what you could do with Legos. The dinner was attended by many British dignitaries, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who gave a brief toast in which he pledged to continue lowering the British voting age until the electorate was ignorant enough to keep the Labour Party in power. Also at the dinner was Education Minister Mohammed Fatwa, the founder of the Fatwa Preschool for the grooming of naughty but strangely alluring little white girls. The Education Minister presented Trump with a ceremonial scimitar, which luckily just missed when the president turned his head at the last minute to point at a chart showing just how many Islamists he plans to deport after he met Mohammed Fatwa. The dinner was also attended by the mayors of several major British cities, including Mayor Fatwa Mohammed Fatwa, the mayor of Birmingham Alhambra, and of course the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan Mohammed Fatwa, followed by several more Fatwas and Mohammeds. The dinner began with a grace said by the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was then arrested for praying within 300 miles of an abortion clinic. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of Britain's Conservative Party, called the arrest absurd, saying Britain was a Christian nation, after which he was arrested for violating the blasphemy laws. Keir Starmer explained that the UK absolutely has free speech, but only as long as you talk silently to yourself and are not within 750 miles of an abortion clinic where such talk could be mistaken for praying to the God of love and life, which would be offensive to the nation's terrorists. Fortunately, Mohammed Fatwa did not hear Kemi Badenoch's offensive remark because he was busy on the phone arranging the sale of some of his preschool students. King Charles III then gave a speech in which he spoke warmly of the special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K., saying that the two nations shared many values, although he couldn't name them for fear of being arrested. President Trump then rose and also gave a speech saying that Great Britain was one of his favorite places in the Middle East, even though he'd gotten a much nicer present from Qatar, who gave him a jet, while the British only gave him some cheap oil painting of Winston Churchill, which was then confiscated for spreading imperialist ideas that were offensive to the Muslims who were conquering the country. The affair ended with Princess Kate and Melania Trump trying to decide who was more glamorous with an arm wrestling match. Princess Kate managed to pin the First Lady, but Melania responded by taking off that gigantic circular hat she wears and spinning it at Kate as if it were Oddjob's Derby and Goldfinger. Fortunately for relations between the two nations, Kate managed to duck, and the hat sailed past her and beheaded Mohammed Fatwa, who congratulated the First Lady on mastering the essentials of Sharia law. After the dinner, Trump accompanied Prime Minister Starmer on a tour of factories and businesses that labor has destroyed by their socialist policies. Trump said he was delighted to make the state visit, but said next time he had to come to one of these crap-hole countries, he hoped it would be someplace like Haiti, so at least he could get some sun. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through sobbing uncontrollably. Please go out or go to your computer or whatever, however you do this, and pre-order a copy of After That, the Dark, the new Cameron Winter mystery, which will be out in October. I would really love to see this book get on the bestseller list, because I would love to see the series continue, which it will only do if the books continue to sell. I'll tell you the story very briefly. Two ordinary citizens, complete strangers who live in two completely separate parts of America, suddenly commit shockingly similar crimes. And Cameron Winter tries to figure out why before it happens again. The Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review, called it brilliant. It's a love story. It's got all different kinds of genres put together. I think you will love it. I really do. I would not sell it to you if I didn't think so. And as I say, if you pre-order it, that's very helpful. You can go on Amazon. We have a page at the Daily Wire. I think it's DailyWire. DailyWire.com/Klavan. It is. And that will give you all the different venues where you can buy it. And I think you can even get some signed copies there too, if you would like. So please do that. Also, if you are wherever you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Daily Wire Plus, where I hope you're watching, if you're just watching it in your mind while you're sitting in a corner with a tinfoil hat on, please leave a comment wherever you are, including in Fantasyland. And if that comment is degrading and racist and sexist, we'll read it on the air because that's the way we are. Today's comment is from DJM5310. Reacting to last week's show about Charlie Kirk. He says, I have never cried so much for someone I didn't know and watched almost every day. My tears and dismantling of my core over the past few days have now turned into calm resolve. I am changed for the better as a person. Charlie Kirk gave us all a beautiful gift in his precious life and tragic death. Yes, no question. That is well put and well said. I have nothing to add to that. Let us get to today's episode, What Next? The only right answer, which is talking about the aftermath of what happens now after Charlie's assassination. And I'm going to say some things that might be a little tough to listen to. There's an old French expression, revenge is a dish that is best served cold. And what it means is you don't act in anger, no matter how angry you may be. You wait until you are dispassionate, and then you carefully and precisely destroy your enemies. And it's an incredibly hard thing to do. I've done it once or twice. I've had some enemies and I've quietly and dispassionately destroyed them. And I always tell you, the devil tells you that his ways will make you stronger, but they always sap your strength. And he's always telling you, just a little more, and you'll get that strength back. But it's not true. There's drugs, promiscuity, not money, but the love of money, feminism, a lot of things like that. They all make people feel like, oh, I'm going to get stronger. And yet slowly their lifeblood drains away. And the same is true of anger. Anger is exactly that way. You all know it. We all have experienced this. When you act in anger, you really feel large, and great. And somehow in the long term, you get burned. I mean, this happened to Europe when they reacted in anger to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and ended European civilization by starting World War I. It happened to us after 9/11. The evil was so unfathomable. You thought, what reaction could be too much? But we acted in anger, and we ended up with 20 years of useless war ending in the Joe Biden humiliating retreat. And that's why I call anger the devil's cocaine, because he addicts you to it and you think it's going to get you where you want to go, but it never does. So the things I say to you today may first strike you as cold or tame or too nice, but trust me and hear me out, because what I'm talking about is winning. Normally, that would be the cue to play the Trump happiness montage. I'm not quite there yet, but every week is a joke. I promise that I'm never going to play it again, and then I play it because I think that's hilarious. But this week, I'm going to tell you in all seriousness, I damn well will play it again, because I am not at all tired of winning, and winning is what I want to talk to you about today. Look, we all know we're supposed to eat our fruits and vegetables, but let's be honest. When was the last time you actually got through 47 different fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers in a day? Actually, for me, I think it was, about a week, 2 weeks ago, something like that. It was disgusting. So you don't want to do that. That's not what you want to do. What you want is some balance of nature. These aren't your typical supplements filled with ingredients you can't pronounce, unless you have a hard time pronouncing broccoli. We're talking about actual whole foods here: mango, spinach, turmeric, blueberries, good stuff. Here's the beautiful part. You can take these capsules normally, and this is where, every time I get to this part of the copy, folks, I have to tell you, I think they're just clowning around. It says you can open up these capsules and sprinkle the powder on literally anything. It'll make your oatmeal taste better. The whole point of these things is that they're capsules. I take them. They're capsules. You take them. It helps your health to get all those good fruits and vegetables, but you don't have to play with them. You just swallow them. It's great. And it gives you the fruits and vegetables you need. They're convenient, and they're easy to take with you wherever you go. There are no bags, no mess, and no measuring. Just clean, quality ingredients ready to go. And like I say, I take them and I like them. Go to balanceofnature.com and use promo code Klavan for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Klavan. And I know what you're saying. This sounds so great. I wish I knew how to spell Klavan. It's Klavan. Chapter 1, What Did and Didn't Happen. So I've been listening to everybody talk and listening to what everybody has to say about this horrible event and the aftermath, and watching the grief of, Erica, Kirk, and the grief of people who didn't know Charlie, and people who, who never heard of him until this moment and yet reacted in other countries. And some of the things I've heard people say in their rage, they killed Charlie Kirk, or so-and-so has blood on his hands, or Charlie tried talking to them and they killed him, so we're not going to do that anymore. And none of those things is true. It's funny. I was preparing to say all this when I saw a column in the Wall Street Journal this morning by Karl Rove saying essentially the same thing. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm wrong, because Karl Rove is often wrong about things, but even a stop clock is right. And these things are not true. They are. You wouldn't be human, and you especially wouldn't be a man if you didn't say these things at first. The anger is natural, and you got to get it out of your system, and you say these things. But that's not what we're dealing with, as far as I'm concerned. The man accused of killing Charlie is a sexually perverse, probably paranoid schizophrenic who seems to have adopted leftist ideology and leftist sexual ideology, and was living with this guy who thought he was going to become a girl and may have been involved in furriness, which is dressing up as animals and things like this. And there may have been accessories before the fact who knew what he was going to do and kept it to themselves, which is illegal. Kash Patel of the FBI is investigating that, and he told that to Hannity, this Cut One.
We're dedicating every asset we have to run the reverse daisy chain analysis of anyone that was in contact with a suspect that's currently in custody, and anyone he contacted, called, and text messaged, and had chats on online social media platforms with. That's the power of the FBI. That's the resources we brought in immediately with our cell phone analytic team to use the cell phone tower data dump system to geolocate specifically where this cell phone was and who had it, and after that, who he was talking to.
I just want to say, this is a sidebar, but the criticisms of Patel and the FBI are complete BS. He was on Capitol Hill, and they were screaming and yelling at him. They brought this guy in 33 hours. Even Steve Bannon, who should know better. I mean, he's a smart guy, Steve, and he was saying, well, that's not police work. The guy just surrendered. No, he surrendered because the walls were closing in, and he felt that, and he panicked, and that's why he surrendered, and that's the way police work is. Police work is not, kicking down the door and chasing people around. It's creating a world in which this guy is going to be immobile. So anyway, let's go. But back to this killer. He obviously, whatever his mental illness is does not make him guiltless. It's the opposite. A man is legally insane if he doesn't know what he's doing is wrong. So if he thought that Charlie was a dragon or something and he had to kill him, that would make him insane. But we know that's not true, because here's what the Washington County Sheriff Nate Brooksby said happened when this guy turned himself in. This is Cut 2.
He was fearful of a SWAT team hit on his house, or he was fearful of being shot by law enforcement. So part of the negotiation and getting him to bring himself in was that we would treat it as delicate and as soft as possible to make him feel comfortable to where he would show up at my office, and that's exactly what happened.
What did he ask for? Can I ask?
He basically for a peaceful, gentle, comfortable transition for him to come out.
All right, so this is important, right? He didn't want to get shot by the SWAT team. Now, this sounds silly, but think about it for a sec. He knew that getting shot was a bad thing. He knew that it was something that he would not want someone to do to him. So when he shot Charlie, he knew that he was violating the central tenet of Western morality, which is the golden rule. And, I've written about my definition of evil in my book, The Kingdom of Cain, which is all about murder and evil. And I'll just summarize it here. You've heard some of it on this show before, which is that every system of morality that actually is a moral system, a system of morality, depends on what I call the great speculation, which is the self-evident truth. You can't prove this, but it is a self-evident truth that other people are as real inside themselves. Their inner life is as real to them as your inner life is to you, as real and as essential, and that all inner lives are equally dear to God. And if you remove the first phrase of that, you have no basis for acting morally. Why would you act morally if you don't believe that other people's lives are real? And if you remove the second one, that they're all equal before God, you have no reason to act morally, because what do you care whether they're real or not? Now, I know there are many, many famous and accomplished intellectuals, some of them very bright, some of them very decent, who think they found another moral system, another basis for a moral system. I tell you, they are wrong, and I am right. And you can read The Kingdom of Cain, and I will explain why. But for now, just trust me on this. You must believe these two things. And that's where we get the golden rule from the Great Speculation, which is, there are two ways to say it. Christians usually say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is obviously a very big order. But the Jews put it in the negative sense, which is, if you would hate somebody doing it to you, don't do it to them, which is also wise. These are different in emphasis, but they're both strong moral systems. And evil is the rejection of the Great Speculation. It's the absence of love, love is that sense of other people, that connection to other people. And murder is evil because to kill someone without just cause, obviously, is a complete denial of that person's reality. And it's an offense against the God who holds that reality dear. So what happened to this assassin is that an ideology replaced the central axiom. That is how ideologies work. They shove out this central truth, this unprovable and yet essential truth of morality, and they put another thing in its place, what you might call an idol, right? And so when this killer texted his boyfriend, his live-in lover after the event, here's what he said. These are the texts being read by Jeff Gray, the Utah County District Attorney, starting with what the assassin said when he texted his lover and confessed to this murder. This is cut 3.
To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson, I am. I'm sorry. Roommate, I thought they caught the person. Robinson, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out.
So we all know that language, the language of hate speech, this kind of, if you don't agree with me, you're hateful. If you condemn me, you're hateful. If you have a moral code that excludes me, you're hateful. And that is what replaced the golden rule in this guy's heart and mind. And you can see he's acting with full awareness. He's acting, cautious. He doesn't want to go out and get his rifle. There's still a vehicle out there. He's trying to escape. He expected never to tell anybody about this till he was old, so he expected to get away with it. This is, pure evil. There's nothing you can call it mental illness, and I'm sure he's a paranoid schizophrenic, but that's no excuse. He knew what he was doing. He knew it was evil. He did it anyway, and I expect he will be tried and convicted, and Utah has a very active death penalty, and I expect he will be put to death, and that'll be just. Justice, this is this lie we have that justice is about rehabilitating criminals. It is not. The thing is, there is a social web. Each one of us is connected by this great speculation, by our knowledge that we're all real and that we are real before God and God holds us all equally dear. That binds us all together. And when somebody commits an act of evil, and murder is the essential act of evil, it warps that web. And justice is what brings that web back into correct alignment. And the reason we allow governments to have power over us is so that they will do that instead of leaving it to us in an endless series of feuds and vengeance. They take over and say, now justice is done. If they don't do that because of George Soros and because of his stupid, DAs, if they don't do that, they're not fulfilling the very, very first responsibility of government. But while I expect justice from the state, I'm going to tell you very clearly in the coldness of my heart, and I do have a very cold heart about this, I do not care what happens to this sick and wicked man. I mean, in my heart, he's already dead. So in other words, yes. Do I think he should be executed? Yes. If not that, he at least must be put away for life, but I am not going to get any satisfaction out of that. What I care about is this country, this country I love so much. I mean, other people have sacrificed far more, but I have made my little sacrifices because I love this country so much. And I will have the vengeance that I want when the structures that promulgated this ideology that replaced the golden rule in this wicked man's heart, when that ideology has lost its place of dominance in our culture, that to me is what this event is about. That's what it signifies, and that's why it happened, and that's what has to end. The truth is, most of us worry about whether our families would be okay financially if something happened to us. The last thing any of us want is for our loved ones to struggle with bills and expenses during an already difficult time. That's where life insurance from Ethos comes in, giving you peace of mind that your family will be protected no matter what. Ethos makes getting life insurance surprisingly simple and affordable. Their completely online platform eliminates the hassle of traditional insurance. No medical exams, no lengthy appointments, just a few quick health questions, and you can get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. What makes it even better is that you can often get same-day coverage without ever leaving your house, which means your family could be protected by the end of today. You might be surprised to learn that quality coverage can cost as little as $2 a day, and with Ethos, you can customize your policy to fit your budget while still getting up to $3 million in protection. The company has earned serious recognition. Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider as of March 2025, and they boast an impressive 4.8-star rating on Trustpilot. It goes to show why they've become the go-to choice for people who want reliable coverage without the runaround. Insurance matters. You've got to have it to protect not just your family, but your own peace of mind. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Klavan. That's ethos.com/KLAVAN. Chapter 2, Why It Happened Now. And why did this happen now? I mean, why does it resonate with so many people in other countries who didn't even know Charlie existed before he died? And I mentioned last week, talking about journalism, that there are stories that are sensational and they capture our imaginations because somehow we identify with the people in them because they're rich or beautiful or royal or whatever it is. And then there are stories that are significant because they represent something that's happening now. And then there are stories that are sensational and significant, and this is one of those. In America, we pride ourselves on the peaceful transfer of power, right? Every time there's an election, we sit back and say the majestic transfer of power in a peaceful democratic society. But that's, in my opinion, a lie. It's only political power that we transfer peacefully. We do that, and we do it much better than, they did it in medieval England or in imperial Rome. We assassinate many, many fewer of our leaders. But the thing is, we still have a robust constitution. It's been damaged, but it's not extinct. So it limits the government's power. And we have a mostly operational election system that went bad in 2020, but has been largely corrected, that still gives the people a lot of political power in this country. It's not just apparent power. You still have a lot of power. And that means because the people are shaped by the culture, because their minds are shaped by the culture, and because they create the culture by the way they behave. Each one of you creates part of the culture, whether you dress like a slob or whether you dress like a gentleman and a lady. That is part of the culture that you are creating. That means that cultural power is the power. The only reason I started opening my mouth politically is because I realized that conservatives did not realize this. And by cultural power, yes, I mean the arts, but I also mean just behavior and things that we believe and things that we all accept as being true. And when cultural power changes hands or threatens to change hands, that's when the shooting starts, because that's when people are really threatened with loss of power. I mean, there's a reason that you can couldn't go to Georgetown and walk down Washington Street in Washington, D.C. to the Washington Monument because he is like the only man in history who ever gave up power willingly. It is not something that happens. People want it. They want to keep it. They will kill to keep it. When you look at the Civil War in America did not start because Abe Lincoln said, I'm going to free the slaves. He said he was not going to free the slaves, but his election and the things that he did believe signaled to the South that the culture had turned against them, that the culture no longer accepted that we could go on half slave and half free. When I was a boy, the power of the post-war consensus, the power of the people who grew up, the greatest generation, was beginning to slip. And that's why when JFK was killed and RFK was killed and Martin Luther King was killed and George Wallace was shot and Malcolm X was shot, it was a very violent time and people started rioting all the time. It was a violent time because culture was changing hands, the power of culture. And by the way, just like then, just like now, when JFK was shot, he was shot by a communist, and the culture rushed to cover it up and spread conspiracy theories that lasted for 1 million years to cover up the fact that the ideology they believed in and were trying to slowly sell to the people had been exposed as a violent, murderous ideology. JFK was a Cold Warrior and a Soviet sympathizer, Lee Harvey Oswald, killed him. And that's where all the conspiracies come from, to shut that up, to close their eyes to the fact that the ideology they embraced, the elite embraced, the people who were taking over our culture embraced, was responsible for the death of the man they held in such high esteem. And that's what's happening today. That the same thing is happening today. They want to erase the fact that this guy replaced the golden rule in his heart. This assassin replaced the golden rule in his heart with the ideology of the left. Here is Jimmy Kimmel trying to erase this the other night. This is cut 4.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
Well, you know, that it's just a lie. And then he made fun of President Trump's grief, and it was a really ugly experience. And he's been suspended indefinitely because affiliate stations affiliated with taking on ABC shows, but affiliated with another business that wants to merge with a business and needs FCC approval. And the FCC now is led by a MAGA guy. They realized they were going to get screwed if they didn't get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. So I'll get back to this in a minute about Kimmel and free speech and all that, but let's just go through this. There was this clown on ABC News, a guy named Matt Gutman, which I love because that's the name of the villain, the fat man in the Maltese Falcon, Matt Gutman. His name is Casper Gutman in the Fat Man. But he reacted to those texts that you were just listening to as if there was some kind of love story. It's cut 5.
It was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who was transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner.
So Gutman apologized, said he was trying to underscore the jarring contrast between the cold-blooded assassination and the human story going on. Okay, but Montel Williams on CNN went the full Monty with this. This is cut 6.
Trying to pigeonhole this as a leftist thing and a right thing. And what we're really talking about, hear me because I'm going to throw you when I say this. We're talking about a love-torn child, a kid. This is probably his first real relationship, and somebody was disparaging the person that he loved. He sat on that building for 30 minutes before he took the shot. Why did he wait until the first word trans came up? Then he took the shot.
You think he heard it? He could hear it?
I think he could hear it. I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think this was a emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other.
Yeah. Well, crap. This was a political idea, the idea that this guy could change sex, and he didn't like the fact that Charlie was talking about reality. And so, that's an ideology. That is a leftist ideology that, as I say, replaced the golden rule in this guy's heart. Then you got to some more sophisticated. So these are guys just exposing themselves for what they are, which I want them to do. I don't want to shut them up. I want them to talk as much as humanly possible so everybody can see what they are. But then there were more sophisticated people. Here's Caitlin Collins talking to Ted Cruz, who is pretty funny here as she tries to use the old leftist technique. Who knows why he acted as he did. Cut 7.
We don't have a motive yet. We don't know yet. We're waiting. Obviously, we've heard what the governor's had to say, what the FBI director said today.
Come on, we don't have a motive yet.
We know
we don't have a motive yet.
What's
really?
happening with
really? That's CNN's position.
I mean, from law enforcement,
he just happened to fire the gun in celebration. You can't tell the motive.
Senator, that's not what I said. And I said law enforcement hasn't laid out a direct motive. They've laid out a lot of evidence here of these messages and what
actually
the
they
shooter
have.
said
They've said that he was a left-wing activist who hated Charlie Kirk. Pardon?
Pardon is because the truth on CNN is such a shocking thing to hear the truth on CNN that she just was startled into a moment of silence. Am I not on CNN anymore? Somebody said something true. Look, Ted Cruz, of course, exactly right. But of all of these people, the worst and the most sinister was Barack Obama. And he is a truly sinister character. And I'm saying that's polite on my part. I can't play the whole thing, so I can't really give you the feeling of it. But if you've ever read or seen Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare, and you've ever seen the famous Friend's Roman Countryman speech, I'll give it to you really quickly. Caesar has just been assassinated. Mark Antony goes out to manipulate the crowd into rebelling against the assassins. And he keeps saying, these assassins are honorable men, so they must have done the right thing. And then slowly, quietly unveils all the things that they did that were wrong, and all the ways that Caesar loved the people, and all the way that Caesar was a wonderful, wonderful guy. But he keeps saying, but these were honorable men, so I must be getting it wrong. I must be getting it wrong. That's what Barack Obama does. It is absolutely despicable. The fact that they are comparing, isn't it so beautiful the way Obama speaks as composed to that rough, tough Trump? Let me just give you a minute of this so at least you get the feel, because it is Shakespearean in its wickedness. This is cut 12.
So we have to extend grace to people during their period of mourning and shock. We can also, at the same time, say that I disagree with the idea that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake. That's not me politicizing the issue. It's making an observation about who are we as a country. I can say that I disagree with the suggestion that my wife or Justice Jackson does not have adequate brain processing power.
So, listen, we got to have sympathy. It's a terrible tragedy. It's a terrible crime. But this guy Charlie Kirk didn't believe in civil rights. And he called my wife an idiot. And then he goes on to say, and the worst thing about this radical idea is it's coming from the White House. So in other words, it's all Trump's fault, really. And it is a performance out of Julius Caesar. And it is exactly that kind of manipulation. And of course, the press is going to play it up as if it were a beautiful thing. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. He basically said, we've got to sympathize, even though obviously Kirk, and by the way, the Civil Rights Act was a good act, but the legal decisions coming out of the act were incredibly bad. And that's why we've lost our right of association and lost our choice of who we hire and who we don't hire. And that's I'm sure, what Charlie was thinking of. But he obviously, by his behavior, was very much in favor of civil rights and treating people with respect and treating people equally. So what I'm telling you is going on, and why this happened now is for 30 years, the left has dominated the culture-making facilities. They have dominated The news media. The news media now only exists on the coast. All political donations by journalists go to Democrats, just about. No journalist votes Republican. They argue that they can be fair, but you can't be fair when you're surrounded by people who agree with you. It just is radicalizing. Universities, there are no riots on universities when leftists come to speak. You can be a communist, you can be a Stalinist, and nobody will riot on a university. But when I come to speak, when Ben Shapiro comes to speak, there is trouble. And the trouble is not started by the kids. It's started by the administration feeding information to the kids to get them ginned up and worked up. The entertainment industry, you know my history, you know my career in Hollywood. Not that I loved it that much, but still it was lucrative. It was gone in 10 minutes when I started to speak out. Just hundreds, if not thousands of actors just signed a pledge that they won't work with any company doing business with Israel. So you know that is left-wing dominated. Nobody is canceled in Hollywood for being left-wing. You're canceled for being right-wing. Now, so they own the culture. For 30 years, they own that cultural power, and now it's starting to shift. Culture shapes the imagination. And remember, the imagination is not just some fun thing where little girls pretend they're princesses and boys pretend they're knights. The imagination is an organ of perception, like your eye, through which you see the unseeable. It works in terms of images to describe the moral order, God's personality, the mind that is expressed in creation. It communicates to us through stories, through pictures, through music, to tell us all these invisible things that are nonetheless real, even though we see them through a glass darkly. They are real. So as the cultural power increased, the left did what powerful people do. They grew corrupt. They wanted more and more. They wanted to control our imaginations. They told themselves they could shape our imaginations into their vision of reality, and reality would become that thing. They could tell us there were two genders, there were more than two genders, and there would be. They could tell us that black dysfunction can be fixed by methods that actually cripple blacks but make the powerful more powerful, and that would be so. That homosexuality is a source of pride. We all need a month in which to celebrate how proud we are of homosexuals, that motherhood is a lowly task and men are abusers for expecting of women that a baby in the womb is not a human being. And they wanted to declare you evil if you disagreed and make you afraid to disagree. So I want to say this. I don't delight in Jimmy Kimmel's cancellation. I think it's all business. I think it very much doesn't have really anything to do with this. They seized the day. But it's different than forcing, for instance, Kevin Hart to give up his dream job hosting the Oscars because of a tweet he said about gay people 5 years before. The left's cancel culture destroyed people for violating left-wing precepts that were in no way central to our culture or agreed upon by everybody. They were not the central ideas of our culture. They were imposing our culture. So an employee who says that gay people should be murdered, yeah, I think he should be fired. I think anybody who's calling for murder should be fired. But if he says homosexuality is immoral, that is standard operating belief in the West to this day. You do not have a right to torment him or cancel him. That's just an opinion. But people who rejoice in murder, who lie about murder, who romanticize murder, who approve of murder, as Obama subtly did in that speech, as far as I'm concerned, he has violated the very central premise of Western morality. Its first directive, that great speculation, that golden rule, and he's replaced it with an ideology. And that's something that does deserve consequences. Again, I'd rather they just told Jimmy Kimmel what he was and let him go on talking, because I want people to see who these people are. But still, this is not the same thing as leftist cancel culture. And again, I've said this last week, I want to repeat it. The difference is not that we are better than they are. It's that we don't have the power they have, and power corrupts. And the left has used its massive cultural power to distort our imaginations. But the first person they had to distort was themselves. They are not lying. They are not lying. They have talked themselves into believing what they wanted us to believe. And now they've lost their monopoly, and they're standing there with their pants off and their completely distorted imaginations. We beat them. The pandemic exposed the extent of their bullying and dishonesty, and we were there to pick up on that, because the DailyWire existed, because Joe Rogan existed, because Elon Musk took over X, because suddenly we had a voice that we created through the new technology, and we could expose who they were. And we did that work. And now they still think they can hide behind the force field, but the force field is no longer there. I'm not trying to shut the left up. I'm not at all. I'm just telling you that they are trying to hold on to their power, but they don't realize that it is gone. That power is gone. It is changing hands. What I'm saying is we are winning. That's why Charlie Kirk was killed. That's why it happened now. It doesn't mean make them guilty. It's not saying they have blood on their hands. I'm saying that's why the rhetoric got so heated. That's why everybody was Hitler. That's why, because they felt the power leaving their fingers, that cultural power on which all politics depend. So I'm ready to let them talk. Let America decide between the golden rule and leftism, right? That said, because leftism says agree with us or die, and the golden rule says treat others as you would be treated. Let America decide. As you know, I never sleep, and recently I've been sleeping almost not at all, but I'm comfortable when I don't sleep because I'm on a Helix mattress. You guys will get on the Helix mattress. It's so comfortable you probably fall right to sleep, so you won't get the great experience I get of lying awake on a mattress that's so comfortable. One thing I've loved about my Helix mattress is how well it does with temperature regulation. It's a big deal for me. It eases some of those annoying middle of the night wake-ups. Very essential as temperatures continue to be warm. Plus, it's easy to connect another wearable device so you can actually see the data to back up your sleep improvement each night without question. What makes Helix different is they don't just sell you a random mattress, they match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style, whether you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, or non-sleeper like myself. They have got you covered. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz and find your ideal match. And trust me, when you find the right match, you will wonder how you ever slept, or in my case, lay awake on anything else. Right now is actually the perfect time to upgrade your sleep because Helix is offering a fantastic extended Labor Day sale. Go to helixsleep.com/Klavan to get 25% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan for 25% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/Klavan. You're probably saying, I'll do that, but how do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. Chapter 3, what winning looks like. Now, this is really important. Anytime you have a goal, you got to know what the goal is. You want to reach the goal, you got to know what the goal is. Some people tell you to write it down. I think that's a good idea, actually. What do I want? How am I going to get it? And I think that this is what people are missing when they start to say, when they say things, I have this argument with Matt sometimes, and I have nothing but respect for Matt and think he does God's work in the world, and I think he's hilarious and talented. But when he says, well, the left is going to do it anyway, so why should we fear that? The point is we are trying to do something different. We are trying to achieve an America that looks different than leftist America. So that's why saying, well, the left is going to censor us anyway, so why should we worry if we censor them? And I know Noel sometimes falls for that too, but no, because we don't want a world of censorship. We want a world where arguments go on, where people speak, where people are free to speak, which we believe will win. We'll win the arguments, and if we don't, we should change our minds. If we lose arguments, we should change our minds. If we lose them legitimately, by logic and facts, I'm willing to change my mind. That's not going to happen with any leftists, I don't think, but still, it might happen occasionally with a liberal here or there. So you have to know what winning looks like, and this is why I disagree very strongly with what the AG Pam Bondi said. This is cut 8.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
So she later clarified that she meant violent threats and things like that, which are illegal. I can't say to you, I'm coming to kill you, or to threaten you. You can't incite violence. And she said that's what she was speaking. And yes, I wish the Attorney General of the United States would get these things right the first time, but she did clarify that. But look, there are these two powers, cultural power and political power. And yes, it's a Venn diagram. Sometimes they interlink, but you have to know what to use when. You have to know when to call upon the cultural power and when to call upon the political power, because a culture has a right to its standards, but a government doesn't necessarily have the right or should have the power to enforce those standards. We can say, women should dress modestly in feminine garb, and people can just agree to that, and that's the way it'll be, except for people who want to be ostracized from that society. But you do not want the government saying, by law, women have to dress the way we say so, because they're not worth it. They don't deserve that power, and the Constitution prevents them from having that power. So again, we have to know what we want. And what I want, I'm an American. I want to be free, and I want people to be free. I want that requires certain things. It means the government has to do less. I want the welfare state cut to its minimum. When people got hysterical about Elon Musk cutting things, and doing it sloppily, which I think sometimes he did, I want that government cut, and if it takes a guy with a buzzsaw to do it, do it. It has to. Everything they do, everything the government does, takes power away from the people. I want them to have enumerated powers and none other. I want them to kill bad guys overseas. I want them to protect our borders. I want them to keep the rules fair for everyone without deciding who wins and who loses. I don't want them investing my money. I want to invest my money. I don't want them, curing diseases. I want labs and capitalism to take care of that. But I want each individual to be free. And I want to build a culture of faith and family and morality in which that freedom can thrive, because if you don't have that, you won't be able to be free. And this is why, I said last week that I'm not for throne and altar like Knowles. And somebody said, well, do you hate on Catholics? I love the Catholics. I love the Catholic Church. I think the Catholic Church is the hub of the Christian church. I don't think it's the only proper Christian church, but I think it's the hub of the Christian church. And I'm an Anglican Catholic, which is right off that hub. But I don't want priests running my government any more than I want politicians running my church. I want a separation of church and state, not in the way they mean it now, where where we're not allowed to have religion in the public square, but the way our founders meant it, that the government should not be able to control the churches, but the churches should not necessarily be controlling the government either. So here's the thing. When we say Charlie tried to talk to people and they killed him, we should do something different. Here's what I think, okay? Let's say you're in a war and you're fighting for freedom, and there's a general in that war who is winning. He's doing the right thing. He's every battle, bang, he's there. He wins every battle. He out-strategizes them. He outflanks them. He outsmarts them. And so they say, well, we got to get rid of this guy. So they send in a spy and they assassinate him. And then someone comes to you and says, well, we tried doing what this general did and they killed him. So we have to try something else. No, we have to somehow learn to do what that general was doing, because that was the winning strategy. Well, Charlie was, in effect, that general. He argued, he proclaimed, he preached, he won in open combat like an American. To win, we have to be like Charlie, because when you win that way, you get the country you want. Your dog's excitement says it all. That full body tail wag, those happy little hops, and that goofy grin that means dinner is here. That's what happens when dogs taste Ollie. While other brands focus on convenience over quality, your dog deserves better than processed kibble that sits on shelves for months. Made fresh in U.S. kitchens with human-grade ingredients, Ollie delivers clean nutrition without any filler or preservatives. Just real food that leads to real results, more energy, shinier coats, better digestion, and genuine mealtime excitement. With 5 protein-packed recipes like fresh beef with sweet potatoes and fresh turkey with blueberries, even picky eaters dive right in. You might find yourself thinking your dog eats better than you do, and honestly, with Ollie, it may be true. Plus, Ollie is the only fresh dog food company offering unlimited routine health screenings, helping your pup live their healthiest, happiest life. That's a good deal with good food, good combination. Dogs deserve the best, and that means fresh, healthy food. Head to ollie.com/Klavan. Tell them all about your dog and use code Klavan to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a happiness guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you will get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/Klavan. Enter code Klavan to get 60% off your first box. Ask your dog how to spell Klavan, and he will tell you. Well, he probably would just bark, but what he's saying is it's Klavan. Final chapter, A Christian Culture. So this is something that I have thought about just a lot, We are a Christian culture, and we are built on biblical values. They are Jewish values that were incarnated in the holy person of Jesus Christ, which changed the values because we saw them in the flesh, and that's different than getting them out of a book where they can't change. In the flesh, they have a living presence. And one of those values is that you should render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's. The separation of church and state in the real sense of that word, meaning the churches are free and the government is supposed to defend that freedom, not that the church is supposed to be chased out of the public square because any hint of religion in your government is somehow contaminated. That's not what it's supposed to mean. But that true separation of church and state is part of Christianity. And you have to ask yourself, how do you figure this out without making Christianity a dead letter, without saying that, yes, you can put a tribute to the devil up next to the Christmas creche, which is ridiculous because the devil's not God, because that's a religion too. I think that's insane. Or, yes, we have to let Muslims into the country in such numbers that they can begin to develop aspects or areas that are subject to Sharia law, which I don't think you should be able to do in any way. So Jesus preached metanoia, which means a change of heart through repentance, through water and the Spirit. And he said, and people get angry at this, but this is what Jesus said. And I'm a Jesus guy. I always go back to him. I always go back to Christ over any other, because you can always interpret language in different ways, but I always go back to what he said in order to interpret other language. And he said that there would be people who get to heaven who did not even know they had served him, but had served them by their love for the least among us. In other words, they had experienced the metanoia that he was looking for. This is Matthew 25. He talks about this, where he says, "You're welcome into heaven because you fed me when I was hungry." And the people say, "Well, we didn't see you. We never saw you. We didn't even know you." And he says, "Yeah, but when you fed the beggar, you were feeding me." C.S. Lewis said this is very succinct. He said, "We do know that no man can be saved except through Christ. We do not know that only those who know him can be saved through him." That is correct. That is what Jesus said. That is exactly what he said. And he said, "Some of you will call me Lord, Lord, but I will not know you because you haven't experienced that change of heart." It's not about doing good. It is about being something that will result in doing good because you have changed. So this is why I don't worry about religion. This was a big controversy for a few minutes, but when I said that I don't worry about the religion of my friends, like Ben Shapiro, I'm not as concerned about that. I think it's better to know the truth than not. I think that that's what Christianity is. It is knowing the truth. I think it's better to know the truth than not, but it's better to live the truth than just to know it. And so I think that there are people who live the truth even though they don't quite know that they are doing it. If you live the truth, when you see the truth face to face, and we all will, when you see the truth face to face, you will follow him into the kingdom. That is what I believe. I believe that God is quite capable of saving those who need to be saved, even though they didn't follow the rules or what the church said. And that's what Jesus said, so that's what I believe. So how do we preach that word into a world that's so corrupt that it can't wait to get rid of Christ? I mean, it couldn't wait to get rid of him when he was actually walking among us. And now that he is gone to his Father, it is much easier to extinguish him. The problem, when I hear Christians say, hate the sin but love the sinner, the problem is the left has successfully taught people that they are their sin, that to hate the sin is to hate them. That's what they've taught them. Not that abortion, they haven't said that abortion is acceptable. It's a right. And if you can't kill your unborn child, your freedom, your selfhood as a woman has been curtailed. So that when you say, let's talk about abortion, they say, oh, you're taking away myself, my being. When you say, well, let's talk about your sexuality and whether it's serving you or not. It's like, no, that's my identity. That was one of the things I liked best about Charlie. He said, I don't believe your sexuality is your identity. I mean, it's demonic to teach people that you're not fully a woman if you can't kill the baby in your womb. It's obviously the opposite, the exact opposite of the truth. So I think, what is the approach here? And I think that we have to make a distinction in this, because this is a cultural thing. We are not going to be able to win this. There are going to be laws that come out of changing the culture, but we're not going to be able to win political power without cultural power. And this is the moment when we are winning and we can take it back. Their lines are broken. Their armies are in disarray. Their armies are in retreat. They are exposed in their lies. This is the moment when we can take back the country. And I think we should openly debate not whether a gay person is nice or not. I've seen conservatives try to say this, but they haven't been able to. It's whether gay culture is good for America, whether culture should center on deviant sexualities, or whether it should center on the source of life and family, which is mothers and fathers. I mean, this thing about the hatred of women is so deep on the left that I think it's a weak spot where we can go in and say, no, I'm sorry, but the mother, the maker of a home, the maker of children, the maker of souls is the first among us, and we are going to treat her like that. That is why we open the door for her. That is why we stand up when she enters the room. That is why we treat her differently and in a more elevated way than we treat other kinds of people. I don't want to discuss, I don't want to be caught discussing whether a Muslim person can be godly or not. I know some Muslim persons who are godly. And I think, I'm not the judge of the world. I've got zero vote, just like you. I've got zero vote of who is saved and who is damned. But I think that there are Muslims who will know the face of God when they see it and will follow him into the kingdom as well. But is this a culture based on the Quran or the Bible? And I think that is something that we should talk about. We wasted 20 years and so many lives trying to turn the Middle East into the West, telling them that they had to respect, our gay rights ideas and our ideas about women. Why? They're based on another book. They have another book as the bottom block in the Jenga tower. Our book is the Bible. And I think that those are two different things, and we should be able to talk about that and argue about it. Not whether a non-believer is a bad person, not whether a non-believer is unsalvageable or can't be an American, but whether or not this culture is shaped by biblical values, among them the rights of women. That's only from the Bible. That only comes out of the Bible, and I think that that's something we should talk about with knowledge and with respect to persons, but not with respect to the culture. I don't respect the culture they're trying to replace it with. Is a culture of abortion better or a culture of life better? Before we start telling people that, oh my God, you've done something unforgivable, you've done something terrible, which by the way, I think God's forgiveness is bigger than your sin. It always is. And I think the people who have been gulled into thinking that an abortion was the right, normal, positive thing to do should not be told, that there's no way out of this dilemma. They should be forgiven as God would forgive them. And they'd be forgiven on earth as God would forgive them in heaven. Whether a culture of life is better than a culture of abortion. That is the way Lila Rose did it. That was why I respected her so much, because she was able to make that distinction. She was able to make that distinction with love for the people whose imaginations had been warped to believe that abortion was a right or positive thing, just like I believe the imagination of George Washington was warped until, through his greatness, he unwarped it by believing that it was somehow in keeping with American values to hold a slave. And right now, I think what we're seeing is we're answering the question whether a culture of debate is better than a culture of murder. See, that's the thing. We always said a culture of debate was better. That's why I don't want to see us silencing people and by law. we've always said the culture of debate is better, and it is. It is better because sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes people are wrong. Sometimes, I was talking at a dinner the other night, and I made this comment, and I saw people just kind of sit up in shock in their chairs. Where I said, there are things that are bad about capitalism. It's such a good thing, capitalism. It ends poverty. It lessens war. It harnesses ambition to the good, but it also creates ugliness, and it creates greed, and it creates consumerism. And that's why the young people are going for it. They're not going for it because they know anything about economics and they think socialism is going to work. They have no idea. They're going for it because they feel there's something wrong in a society where they have to buy meaningless junk in order to participate. And I think that is the thing that's bothering them. I want for America a culture of freedom, which has to be, as John Adams said, a religious and moral culture. I want a culture where artists on the left can speak. I want a culture where artists on the left can speak, but they can't silence artists on the right. I want a culture where you can go and speak at a university, whether you are a nutbag like Bernie Sanders or whether you are a sane but annoying person like Ben Shapiro. I want somebody, I want people to be able to walk on those universities without fear. And as when I was a kid, to argue at the top of their lungs in their dorm rooms and not feel that they're going to be destroyed. I want news outlets to hire people from both sides of the aisle to make sure that they report the news correctly. That's their job. Their job is not to report the truth. They don't know the truth. Their job is to report the facts, and they can't get the facts unless their mind is clear, and they can't have a clear mind unless half of them are on one side and half of them are on the other, and they're willing to argue it out in their free time, as I did when I was a reporter. Charlie Kirk was winning this fight that we've all been fighting all this time. I've been fighting it now for more than 20 years. I didn't mean to get into it. I had to because of what I saw happening when I returned to America from overseas. Charlie Kirk was winning this fight. That's why they're turning out in England where they didn't even know who he was. That's why they're turning out in countries where they don't even speak English and didn't know what it was. He was winning this fight because he was embodying the faith, Jesus' faith, and what he said was the way we should treat people and the way we should think of government and the way we should think of our arguments. He was winning the political argument. He was winning it through debate and grace and fearlessness. And as I said at the outset, I am in no way tired of winning. And I believe even in this moment, in this difficult moment, that the winning has just begun. If you could go back in time and stop the Holocaust, would you do it? If you could rescue even one person from the worst human atrocities in history, wouldn't you do it? Now think about this. Every single day in America, around 3,000 babies are aborted. Unimaginable. Someday history will look back on this as a genocide of our children because right now, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in abortion. But unlike the past, you can do something about this today. PreBorn Network clinics are on the front lines, meeting women in their darkest hour, loving them, and helping them choose life. This year alone, over 38,000 babies have been rescued, and the ultrasound, that simple moment when a mother sees her baby, is the game changer. It literally doubles a baby's chance at life. Let me ask you again, if you could, would you? You can right now. Just $28 provides a life-saving ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/Klavan, preborn.com/KLAVAN, or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Together, we can end this tragedy, one mother, one baby at a time. So for over a week, we paused advertisements and any appeals for DailyWire memberships to focus on the only thing that truly mattered in the moment, which was remembering and honoring the legacy of Charlie Kirk. And yet, even without being asked, you showed up for us, watching, commenting, sharing, and supporting us by becoming DailyWire members. You reminded us once again that we're not alone in the fight for freedom, that we will not be silenced, and that together we're going to keep building the future. So thank you for standing with us. You are what makes America great and inspires us to continue the work we do every day. Klavan Klapbacks.
Pardon?
Yeah!
Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz actually has a sense of humor. All right. Klavan Klapbacks at DailyWire.com. Klavan with a K. Klapbacks also with a K. Klavan Klapbacks at DailyWire.com. Write in. Ask any question you want. Religion, politics, personal matters. Obviously, today we got a lot about Charlie. This one is from Morgan. She says, "Hi, Andrew. My husband is a huge Charlie Kirk fan, and we have both been deeply impacted by his assassination. My husband, raised Catholic, has recently been getting back into reading the Bible. After some time away from religion and faith, this morning, he heavily credited this to Charlie Kirk, saying that he was really looking forward to reading the Bible and being able to follow along with Charlie and listen to what he has to say. He says that everything that has happened has ruined that and now does not want to get back into it. I was hopeful that this tragedy would actually bring my husband back to faith and make it stronger, but I'm fearful that the opposite is taking place. Can you please give me any advice on how I can encourage him to continue his journey back to faith? Thank you for your show and your voice in this dark time." I think that you have to have patience. You have to let him make this journey. As I've always said, grief is a desert that has to be crossed on foot. There's no fast way. And this is what people are feeling. Even people who didn't know him and people like you who are paying attention to him do feel it's grief. And you got to get through it. And it may seem like grief feels like you're in a brick box. That's what it feels like. It feels there's no way out. And you got to walk. You got to set your eyes on where you want to go. And I always say that's why you should keep your eye on God in moments of faith and in moments of grief, even if you stop believing in him. Keep your eye on God, and it will get you back to that place. Let him go through that. Listen to him. Listen to what he's saying. Talk to him about what he's saying. See if you can get him to actually come out with what he's saying. Don't argue. You don't have to argue with him. Just hear him out. And at some point, point out that people always have died. People always have suffered tragedies. That was true in the Bible. The Bible shows us that the death of Jesus is not a happy thing. And it tells you what kind of world we're living in. That's a clue. That's a clue that they crucified the Lord, and it wasn't the Jews, it wasn't the Romans, it was everybody. It was everybody. And it was all the segments of society, and that's the world we are living in. So it's a horrible tragedy and a shock that Charlie was murdered, but it's not a surprise, right? This is the world we are living in. And so, that's something you can say to him, but first hear him out and let him talk and let him go through this process that he is now in. From Anonymous, "Dear Andrew, I've struggled to share my grief at last week's tragic events with my husband, who is staunchly center-left. In my heart, the only appropriate response from anyone who has had any empathy with the left must now be to renounce it absolutely. It has made me question whether our values still align and whether we should have children. How can I move past my grief and remain a loving wife to my husband despite our political differences?" All right, this is a twofold thing. First of all, your dedication and devotion to your husband should come first. If he were embracing the idea that he should murder people, that would be different. If you were embracing open evil, he's a center-left guy. If you can't handle his politics, stop paying attention to politics. Your first devotion is to your husband. And if you can't handle, the politics, which sometimes gets as grim as it is now, and it can get even grimmer than it is now, then stop paying attention to politics and pay attention to being in your marriage and having your children and dedicating yourself, devoting yourself to your husband. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you too are going through a moment of rage in which you're saying the only appropriate response to Charlie's murder is to renounce the left absolutely. That's not true. To renounce leftism, I think, is always the right response at any given moment. It's a sick, horrible failure of a philosophy, just like fascism is. These are both bad philosophies because they take away people's freedom. And freedom is what God wants us to have. God is a God of freedom. And so you are violating his nature and your creation and your nature by taking away freedom, whether it's through, some kind of idea that sounds good, like making everything equal, or whether it's just through fascism because you want order, which I guess is also a good if you can get it. So you are actually so angry that you are eradicating, center leftism, which is the idea that there should be a welfare state, that, we should be open to ways of life that may not be conducive to morality, things like that. And so, no, if you can't handle politics without being devoted to your husband, I'm sure you married him for a reason. I'm sure you fell in love with him for a reason. I'm sure you still love him, and probably with good reason. And that should be your first order of business. And you have to wait to get past this anger that you're feeling, totally appropriate to feel it, but not to live by it, because it is the devil's cocaine. All right, we're going to go into member block and kind of talk about some lighter things because I have to. So come on over. If you're not a member, become a member. Right this very day, go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. If you get the discount, you can get all our stuff. And if you want to pay even more, you don't have to listen to Knowles. Okay, so please come on over and to member block. Otherwise, you will be plunged into Klavanlessness before your time.